Bizarro Bottom is an episode of SpongeBob that revolves around SpongeBob finding himself in an opposite version of Bikini Bottom. You know, stuff like the Krusty Krab makes tacos, Mr. Krabs is generous, Gary is a slug, not a snail. While it was fun to see this alternate version of a place I've come to know so well, I can't help but think that this episode completely missed the mark on using this concept to tell a compelling story. Chapter 1. The SpongeBob writers don't understand the Twilight Zone. The episode begins with an alternate intro for Sponge Tom Short Pants. Sponge Tom has actually appeared on the show before as a possible replacement to SpongeBob when he was at risk of not being able to perform his duties at the Krusty Krab. However, because the show is going off the foundation of a previously established character, it kinda hinders how bizarro he can be. Like, a bizarro version of a character is a unique opportunity for the show to shine a light on some of the character traits that a certain character has by showing the complete opposite of those traits. With Sponge Tom, the only trait that makes him the opposite of SpongeBob is that he's much more reserved and isn't as excitable as his more color-saturated counterpart. But because this is the only personality trait that Sponge Tom has, he doesn't really read as an anti-SpongeBob at all. Like, come on, writers, that's really the only trait you went with? Not SpongeBob's optimism, not his naivete, not his fry cook perfectionism? You decided that the best way to showcase the polar opposite of one of, if not the most famous cartoon character in history was to have him say, "I'm prepared," in a way that's a little quieter than how SpongeBob would say, "I'm ready." Just kinda weak. I think a problem the writers ran into when writing Sponge Tom is that a bizarro SpongeBob, well, it would just be Squidward. Like, you already have a show that revolves around two characters who have polar opposite personalities, SpongeBob and Squidward. Maybe a show with two characters like that just isn't meant to have a Bizarro World episode, because every SpongeBob and Squidward episode already is about opposing attitudes. Maybe that's a stretch. Maybe they still could have used a concept like this, and the way that they could have done it is to lean into the fact that a Bizarro SpongeBob and Bizarro Squidward are basically just swapped personalities. Maybe the episode could have had SpongeBob and Squidward get lost in Bizarro Bottom together, and they team up with the Bizarro version that more aligns with their personalities. That properly uses the Bizarro concept to its fullest, because it actually tells us something about the characters. Whereas currently, the personality of Sponge Tom doesn't connect to SpongeBob at all, other than the superficial traits of what he looks like, where he lives, and where he works. The first few minutes of the episode are dedicated to a day in the life of Sponge Tom, and nothing happens. You're just watching a guy go to work. I absolutely hate when shows do this. It's writing 101, guys. Scenes need to have a purpose. I guess you could maybe argue the point of these early scenes is that they are supposed to show how different Squidward and Mr. Krabs are in this bizarro town, with Octoword being more nice and Mr. Claus not being cheap, but I still maintain that we didn't need this intro in the slightest. All of these things are established later on in the episode when SpongeBob finds himself in their world. The worst thing this opening does, besides being boring of course, is that it robs the audience of the chance to see this world through SpongeBob's POV. This episode is supposed to be inspired by the Twilight Zone, which is an anthology series that was all about putting a person or a group of people in a situation that just seemed a little off. Sometimes because of aliens, sometimes because of society, sometimes both. Something the Twilight Zone does really well is how and when it presents information through the character's point of view. You, as the audience, usually only know as much as the protagonist of the episode, so you feel like you're on the journey with them. SpongeBob, the show, tries to imitate the Twilight Zone with its Tidal Zone opening, but the problem is that this Tidal Zone intro happens right after we've already been shown a day in the life of Bizarro Bottom, which undermines the kind of writing that the Twilight Zone does. We've already seen this bizarro world, we already know what it is, and we've already seen some of the characters within it, not through the eyes of our protagonist. You invoke the name of the Twilight Zone, yet your storytelling doesn't reflect it one bit. Chapter 2. The lack of story. The reason SpongeBob is even in Bizarro Bottom, not sure if I should keep calling it Bizarro Bottom or if I should call it Tankini Top, because that's what the Bizarro town is actually called. Get it? Tankini Top, Bikini Bottom. But that's not revealed until later. You know what? Bizarro Bottom sounds better, so I'm just going to keep calling it that, okay? Don't correct me in the comments below, or do it. I don't care. I can use the engagement. So SpongeBob is in Bizarro Bottom because he fell asleep on a bus and tiredly stumbled into Sponge Tom's house just as Sponge Tom left to go on a trip. A effectively taking his doppelganger's place. The episode would have been a lot better if it just simply began with SpongeBob waking up in Sponge Tom's house without explaining why he got there, and then revealing how he got there later. That way, all the Bizarro characters are introduced to us through SpongeBob's eyes, and we can better feel SpongeBob's confusion as we won't be familiar with them already. This would have also given the episode about 2 minutes more to expand the actual story, which it desperately needed. The whole episode is riddled with other pacing issues as well. The way that the characters talk is so slow and weird and monotone. I think maybe this is because their Bikini Bottom counterparts usually talk pretty quickly, but like, does that really justify these weird speech patterns that rob the characters of their personality and slow down scenes to a snail's pace? Or should I say, slug's pace, because they have slugs in Bizarro Bottom. Wouldn't it be better if Mr. Claus just talked normal and just threw in a few references about donating to charity or how he wants to make sure his customers get discounts or whatever? That's all we needed to make him Bizarro, and we would have had a lot of time to actually tell a story. For an example of really good story pacing in SpongeBob, I talked a little while ago about dying for pie. Link in the description, by the way. And I'm actually almost done with another video about wet painters, so make sure to subscribe so you can see that when it comes out. Okay, calls to actions out of the way. Anyway, so these episodes are 2 of many pre-movie SpongeBob episodes that do not waste a single second of their 11 minutes. Want to know why these episodes are as beloved as they are? They don't have long, droning, time-wasting scenes that pad out their runtime. They're either telling a joke, progressing the story, or teaching you something new about the characters, and sometimes they do all 3 of those things at once. And speaking of story, Bizarro Bottom's story is... oh, wait, there isn't one. SpongeBob doesn't undergo a character arc. He doesn't have any of his character flaws challenged. And worst of all, nothing is at stake. What does SpongeBob have to lose by being here? He's not in any danger. No one is trying to hurt him or arrest him for trespassing. He's not even like on the verge of getting fired from the Krusty Krab if he doesn't get home in time. It seems like SpongeBob is, for pretty much no reason, afraid of everyone here just so the story can manufacture some semblance of conflict. And sure, yeah, it would be weird if you were in a place that was kind of like your home, but everything was just off. I can see that. I get that, but I don't see what makes the Bizarro people so scary to the point that SpongeBob isn't able to just, you know, ask what's going on. I mean, I know why he doesn't ask, because then there wouldn't be a story. But if that's the only reason a character doesn't do something in universe, then you haven't built a believable narrative. The story falls apart even more after SpongeBob leaves the Krusty Taco, or whatever the it's called. The next thing that happens is that he sees the Chum Bucket is actually a successful restaurant. And by the way, we don't even see Bizarro Plankton, only the Bizarro Chum Bucket. What a disappointment. I thought Bizarro Plankton was gonna be giant, and instead of stealing the formula, he, what's the opposite of stealing a formula? Oh, I know. He writes recipe books and he gives them away for free. Yeah, that worked. That's pretty funny. Get me on your staff, SpongeBob writers. I'll whip you into shape. I think it's kind of funny that I was disappointed we never saw Bizarro Plankton. Like, none of the Bizarro characters are any good, yet the concept alone still makes me want to see more of this Bizarro town. That doesn't make this a good episode or anything. It just kind of goes to show that it's an interesting concept, and that makes it all the more disappointing that we didn't see it through to its full potential. Then we get to Patrick and Sandy, which are not only doppelgangers of their Bikini Bottom counterparts, but also doppelgangers of each other for some reason. SpongeBob mixes them up because he's wearing these big glasses and what is a long and easy to expect scene. Yes, we know that's not really Patrick and Sandy. Why are we dragging this out? Just write a real story, you barnacle heads. The sequence is so muddled, and Bizarro, Patrick, and Sandy have like no screen time, so I guess the writers just kind of decided that Patrick and Sandy weren't worth their time. Then there's this little speed run of a bunch of different kind of whatever opposite places. SpongeBob then goes to his parents, sees Sponge Tom because that's where he was. They interact in a way that isn't very meaningful because, like I said earlier, they aren't even really opposites. And then SpongeBob passes out, ends up in Bikini Bottom, and the episode just sort of ends. Chapter 3. Rock Bottom versus Bizarro Bottom. So this episode narratively is about the same as Rock Bottom, but like a not good version. They both involve SpongeBob being stranded in a strange place and wanting to get home, but Rock Bottom succeeds in so many places where Bizarro Bottom fails. For one, Rock Bottom is entirely from SpongeBob's point of view, so all the wacky fish he encounters down there are fish we as the audience are also seeing for the first time. 2, SpongeBob has a distinct character flaw that is the thing that is keeping him him in rock bottom. He's a scatterbrain. He can't find his wallet at the beginning, which angers the bus driver, who eventually abandons him. He got on the wrong bus, and when he tries to leave rock bottom, he keeps getting distracted and misses the next bus out of there. Okay, there's a few instances where it seems like he's doing everything right and the bus just kind of hates him, but the main reason he's stuck there is because he's a scatterbrain. In Bizarro Bottom, he's just kind of a really eepy bean for no reason, which isn't really a character flaw because he's not sleepy because any of his shortcomings, he's just kind of tired. To actually kind of criticize rock bottom, SpongeBob doesn't actually meaningfully change his flawed nature and still gets to escape rock bottom without learning to overcome his scatterbrainedness. However, the ending lesson of rock bottom is still pretty strong because it is a rock bottomite who helps SpongeBob get home, which does teach kids that even people from different places who seem weird can be good people. Bizarro Bottom can't really teach this same lesson though, because the Bizarro Bottom people, despite being bizarro, are still normal people. Actually, in a lot of ways, Bizarro Bottom is more normal than Bikini Bottom, with the background fish of Bizarro Bottom all being chill and smiley, in contrast with the background fish in Bikini Bottom who will tear you limb from limb if their Krabby Patty has too much mustard. And it's fine that Bizarro Bottom can't teach the same lesson as Rock Bottom. Despite their similarities, they are different episodes. The problem with Bizarro Bottom is that it taught no lesson at all. Seriously, what does this episode teach, other than that 26 years might be a little too long for a cartoon series to run? The episode is it's hollow. It seems like they just wanted to show us a blue Mr. Krabs and be like, look, we're doing something different, when in reality, they weren't doing anything at all. Chapter 4. Rewriting Bizarro Bottom. So, how would I rewrite Bizarro Bottom? After all, that is the thumbnail of this video, rewriting Bizarro Bottom. If that even is the thumbnail you saw when you clicked this video, I don't know. I'm gonna do one of those like A/B testing things to try and maximize clicks because you know what Mr. Krabs always says? The money is always right! Nevertheless, I'll share my rewrites. First off, like I said earlier, SpongeBob and Squidward should both go to Bizarro Bottom. This allows for SpongeBob to have another person that he can point out the strange world to, and also set up a conflict between the two that should escalate when they ally with the Bizarro version of the other character. Secondly, don't show Bizarro Bottom except through the eyes of our Bikini Bottom resident protagonist. Third, keep the whole thing about SpongeBob being suspicious of the people of Bizarro Bottom. I actually like that part of the episode, but it could do a little better. Have this belief that SpongeBob holds that there's something off about the people be SpongeBob's character flaw, and contrast it with Squidward's perspective, where he could be much more accepting of the Bizarro Bottomites. After all, Squidward usually bears the brunt of the background fish's wrath in Bikini Bottom, so he'd probably get along quite well with these much nicer background fish that populate Bizarro Bottom. Fourth, give SpongeBob and Squidward a specific goal that they have to achieve in Bizarro Bottom. Maybe Mr. Krabs sent them there to get further training from Mr. Claus, and because it's Bizarro World, SpongeBob is terrible at the training while Squidward excels. In the end, SpongeBob would learn a lesson from these more mild Bizarro Bottomites, which is that you shouldn't jump to conclusions. On top of that, you flesh out the Bizarro characters a little more and reveal them periodically throughout the story to keep the audience invested in seeing more of the Bizarro world. With these changes, Bizarro Bottom could have been a story worthy of its concept. Look, I get why you might have enjoyed this episode. It's cool to see things that we're familiar with, but just a little different. I get why you were drawn to that. I was too. But you can't just show thing we're aware of but different and then just not do any of the other things that telling a good story requires. The only reason that we are even familiar enough with the SpongeBob universe that they can even do an episode like this is because SpongeBob has episodes that do tell good stories, and something like Bizarro Bottom sits on the back of those stories and goes, what if Krusty Krab made taco? And expects that to be worth your viewing time. It's lazy, it's cynical, it's disrespectful to you, it's disrespectful to me, and most importantly, it's disrespectful to the universe of SpongeBob, which could have really benefited from having a proper Bizarro World episode. While this was an episode of SpongeBob that was all about everything being the opposite, one thing it certainly didn't do differently was shake up any of the bland and lazy writing decisions that have been plaguing the show for decades. So, what'd you think of the video? What would you have changed about Bizarro Bottom? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoy what I have to say, liking and subscribing goes a long way. But if you really want to help me get the channel to a place where I can make more consistent, quality content for you guys, I do have a Patreon, or you can become a channel member. Also, check out my gaming channel. Over there, I cover some of the SpongeBob GBA games, among other games too. That's all for me. See you next time.